in my opinion, one of the most egregious lies in European political history is that Ukraine is fighting for Europe. No, Ukraine is not fighting for Europe. Ukraine is fighting for itself. European politicians are preparing for a European war with Russia. But the danger in this is that no one would survive it. Yesterday, a council meeting of foreign ministers was held in Brussels, taking place concurrently with the ongoing operations here in Berlin. And I continue to observe that it's not merely a war psychosis, but rather a full-blown, dangerous war fanaticism that has now firmly taken root in Brussels. This is practically and widely prevalent among the European leaders, specifically among the European, predominantly liberal politicians.
You know, if I can take a slightly broader perspective on this, then
the problem is evident from the fact that last week at the NATO Foreign Ministers Council meeting, practically all the Western Europeans, the Nordic countries and the Baltic states were all discussing the idea that even if peace were to eventually arrive, we must prepare ourselves for a long-term hostile relationship with Russia. Yesterday, at the Foreign Affairs Council meeting, the EU Foreign Ministers Council meeting, they discussed that even if peace comes, we must prepare to finance Ukraine, to finance the Ukrainian army, to finance the operation of the Ukrainian state. And until then, we will finance the Ukrainians' war with European taxpayers' money. This also clearly demonstrates that the European political elite was at this very moment absolutely not interested in the establishment of peace. This is why I view with concern those events where it's not the Americans and Russians negotiating with each other, but the Europeans trying to meddle in this process. It's quite striking that in April 2022, when the Russians and Ukrainians had already reached an agreement in Istanbul, at that point the British Prime Minister traveled to Kyiv and he made it absolutely clear to the Ukrainians that they needed to continue the war. When the summer in Alaska, the American and Russian presidents met and a fundamentally hopeful atmosphere was established. Then when Zelensky traveled to Washington to meet Donald Trump, the Europeans accompanied him, holding his hand, just to make sure that by some chance peace wouldn't break out in the end. And even now, you know, such belligerent declarations are being made at those conferences where the Europeans are present, that one truly begins to doubt whether it is genuinely about peace. It also became clear yesterday in Brussels that European Union politicians are simply overstepping their own EU rules in order to drag all of Europe into war. The rules of the European Union no longer matter. They brazenly disregard, they openly infringe upon the European Union's very own established rules and principles, just so they can drag this entire continent into a prolonged and destructive war.
There's a recent statement from Trump indicating that a solution leading to the end of the war in Ukraine is closer than it has ever been. Last night, that is according to European time. On the other hand, I see details in the Berlin European peace plan that I believe are completely unacceptable for the Russians. And I'm not saying in my opinion because I just made it up now, but because these were already on the table before. So the Europeans would cap the Ukrainian army strength at 800,000 personnel. Before this, the Russians had actually proposed a much lower figure. This multinational force could also serve as peacekeepers.
I recall there were statements by Lavrov or Putin that completely ruled out this possibility. So it really doesn't seem like there's any approach towards peace.
Yes, well, look, if the question is whether yesterday's council session with the foreign ministers conveyed an atmosphere of peace or war, then I can tell you this, that unfortunately it was a warlike atmosphere. So what we are talking about now is the following. They want to send 80 trillion forints to Ukraine. So it's worth clarifying, 80 trillion forints. Behind the 8, there are 4 zeros for 80,000 and then 9 more for the billion. So this is an 8 and 13 separate zeros. So they want to send this much money to Ukraine. Of this amount, 46 trillion, yes, 46 trillion would be used to arm and sustain the Ukrainian army in conflict. So 46 trillion forints would be allocated for army development, for arming, for military strength, for transfer to a country that is our neighbor. into a neighboring country of ours where there is an incredible amount of state-organized corruption, where a war mafia is ruling, where there is great uncertainty, and which is not a NATO member. So in a non-allied neighbor of ours, 46 trillion forints are appearing for rearmament. It is worth giving this some serious thought. This is completely and utterly contrary to the interests of Hungary, and it is entirely against our national security interests.
Supporting Ukraine costs money, but still much less than if we let it fail, and then we would have to guarantee Europe's security. So if I may put it crudely, when they feed the European public opinion that we should send a lot of money now, it's because if they sent it later, it would cost twice as much.
In my opinion, one of the most egregious lies in European political history is that Ukraine is fighting for Europe. No, Ukraine is not fighting for Europe. Ukraine is fighting for itself. Russia has not attacked a single European Union member state. Russia has not attacked a single NATO member either. So, Ukraine is not defending NATO, nor the European Union, nor Hungary, nor any other European country. Instead, the Ukrainians are defending themselves. And arising from this, we have no legal or moral obligation whatsoever to send weapons, money, or soldiers into this war. It is one of the most blatant and outrageous lies to claim that any investment in the Ukrainian army is an investment in European security. No, that is simply not true. That is not true at all. Ukraine is defending itself. Ukraine is not defending Europe. Europe and the entire transatlantic region is protected by NATO. Therefore, there is no need for us to expect Ukraine to continuously sacrifice itself on the altar of European defense, because this dimension simply does not exist. NATO's military power cannot be compared to Russia's military power. Why would Russia ever attack any NATO member? So I understand that European politicians are preparing for a European war with Russia. But the danger in this is that no one would survive it. So if Europe and Russia clash, it necessarily means NATO and Russia clash. And everyone knows that would be a nuclear war, which no one could survive anywhere. It's completely clear that if this asset held there by the Russians, the European Union confiscates it, takes it away, uses it, appropriates it, steals it. So you can look for the right verbs here.
The British Prime Minister, the Belgian Prime Minister also used this word.
It then follows from that the Belgian, and through this, the European Union's financial market, and through that, the global trust in the European economy will completely disappear. And we certainly know that in the functioning of any economy, beyond the tangible products and actual physical output, confidence is one of the most paramount considerations. And if that confidence disappears, regarding the European economy and the European investment environment, then in essence, it could very easily signify the complete collapse of the entire European economy. And the Russians told us that their reaction would naturally correspond to the position taken by the member states on this issue. We strongly oppose that the European Union would take such a serious step that could lead to a serious escalation.